Hello, everybody, and welcome to Outlawed Thoughts, episode 69. Giggity.
Yep.
We're here with the only person to have on episode 69,
Oh,
obviously.
hey.
Tyler Janke, you are a libertarian podcast review. I just say one of the kind of quintessential libertarian sphere shows at this point, just because you're always covering kind of the topics everybody wants to cover but doesn't a lot of the time.
I appreciate that. I guess. Yeah. No. Andy and I have fun. We have, you come on there. We do the Kill Pod stuff. That's always good.
Oh, that's a blast! I forgot about that.
Yeah, and then of course we do try to do some serious things mixed in with just BS. So I appreciate you having me on tonight. I always enjoy your show too.
Oh no, it's great having you on. We're talking about sort of an interesting topic outside of the space of children beheading and brown people bombing, which is something that I was definitely interested in having, considering that's been filling up the timeline. I've also got some Four Roses small batch select that I got as a birthday gift,
Wow.
which I'm going to begrudgingly mix with this juice cocktail that I made, which is probably going to be a horrible idea, but we're going to try that.
I just have a local beer from my area, so this is called Tahoe Deep. There you go. Cheers.
Tahoe Deep. Cheers.
I don't know.
Yeah. So basically, I figure how I'll do this is I'll give a bit of an update or sort of a backstory on how we got to where we are. But we're covering this Eric July lawsuit that is recent, within the last just couple days, but then really sort of the all-around drama and how we got to this point, because I feel like that's sort of important to cover at this point. I did see a great Twitter thread today by Ricada, which I have pulled up here, because he posted his summary of events in response to one of the kind of Twitter shitheads. And so I'll read that, and then I'll sort of give my own version of events, because there's even some stuff that I saw before that, before I think even Ricada was paying attention, because I'm a fan of pretty much everybody who was involved here. And so that's why this is a drama thing that I paid attention to, because, I listen to a lot of podcasts and stuff while I work. That's sort of my routine. And not only do I listen to Eric July's stuff occasionally with, he does some stuff with Geeks and Gamers, which is a blog that I'll read occasionally, and they have a podcast. But as well as obviously Dick Masterson, who I've been a fan on the internet of since I literally got on the internet. I mean, I found his Dr. Phil video probably, a year after finding YouTube. So, that's pretty early on in my exposure to the internet. Adam Nutter in here giving us our news updates on sports. Breaking news: the Giants are currently winning 6-0 against the Bills. This is a big deal for me. Please clap. I don't know that game, but I will clap for them because I don't care.
Yeah.
Oh, you fuck it.
My 49ers went down on a missed field goal at the end, so I can't be too happy. But for my boy Adam, I'm a fan, so I'll clap for him.
Yeah, I'm a Packers fan, and so I've just been not enjoying football recently.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and my dad's a Raiders fan, so he has the same feeling. So it goes right. Goes the whole route. Shout out to Adam Nutter, though, in the chat. JC, always seeing you around, and Eddie Grimm, all the usual suspects. I haven't seen Benzo Barbie in chat for a while. I DM'd her a bit, so
yeah.
The 49ers lost $350 on that missed field goal. Yeah, that's rough. That's some Toad energy.
Right. I can only imagine. Toad left our group chat. He does all the time, and evidently he's pissed off enough to not come back to it this time. So a little disappointed in that, but also it doesn't. I mean, that's what it is. So
I listen. I love Toad to death, but I had a lot of family members do gambling stuff. So I don't talk about it with anybody. I don't talk about gambling stuff, but I don't like it. I don't like I'm not a big gambling person. I like poker, like
yeah,
that kind of stuff.
yeah,
But the difference when you're talking about sports betting is I've always gone by the moniker if you can bet on it, it's fixed. I don't think the mob didn't just give up on rigging stuff. Like
right.
that power shifted to somebody. And I don't think people who like really gamble like are willing to grapple with that because they assume, well, I'm still winning sometimes, so it doesn't matter. But it's like, no, it's all kind of simulated at the end of the day. It's all just numbers.
Yeah, I'll do poker or things that are kind of more in my control. Which poker. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a game of everything and whatever. We don't have to go down this route, but
My
just going back to
grandmother, my
Okay.
grandmother, my one from Texas, she's passed away now, but she used to go. We would occasionally visit Vegas, and this woman would just sit there all day playing slot machines, and every fucking time she did it like clockwork, she'd come back up to the hotel with like $800-900 in cash profit. She was
Yeah.
like, it was like a goddamn machine, and I never figured it out. I was
know.
like, I don't understand this. Like, how is it just wherewithal?
I don't want to disparage your grandma, but you sure she was playing poker? I don't know.
Oh fuck. So I guess there's sort of I'll read this. This is sort of the update I have, or the timeline that Ricada put out. So he's responding to somebody in chat. I don't know if I can share my screen on here. I've never tried. So let me see if I can. If I can, then I'll do this. But I don't think I can. Yeah, I can't. So we're just going to read it. I'm going to read it, and that's good enough. He mentioned no one talking about the comic, praised the story, inferred story bad, was challenged to read it and review it, did, said it was bad, gave notes to make better. He was immediately dismissed as a hater, racist, SJW, and more because he did the one thing no one was allowed to do, criticize Isom. After that, he looked at the price, thought it was too much, said it was a great business model, suggested drop shipping, etc. Called angry because black man sugness. The way he typed this is the most condescending shit. I love it. Looked at charity, asked why $2.50 book needed a $17 donation. Was told actually it's $14 book. Says kinda looks like fraud. Where's the money going? Response: why do you hate charity, racist? Mysteriously, $8,000 donation gets made within days. Numbers still don't make sense. Gets blamed for someone else contacting that charity, and then someone else contacting Isom Ministry because he laughed at it. The whole world hears he and Vito are behind it because racist jealousy. Eric comes on my show and says he never claimed it was because he doesn't have evidence. Incidentally, all I ever asked for was evidence Eric promised he had in a video, and now he doesn't. After that, it's over, man. Everyone why would Dick do this? So I'll go ahead and jump in here, and this is where I'll sort of give my abridged version of this. So this whole drama involving Eric July and the internet as a whole at this point, because I think sort of you're going to have lines drawn because that's how internet drama works, and so I want to kind of give a timeline. But so Magoo and me are going to disagree on this, I can tell already. Dick Masterson and Vito are leftists who are trying to justify ruining a business so they didn't like a comic. It's gayer than poop in a pee hole. So here's the thing. I'm going to separate these things within my timeline, and there's a reason for that, and I'm going to get into that, and we'll kind of re-highlight Magoo's comment there. I want to start here. So this whole thing starts after Eric July, who is this sort of YouTuber who has a platform where he talks about, he was talking about politics and pop culture, right? He shifted his channel to talking mostly about just pop culture, just shows and comics and those things. Some surrounding politics involved with it, right, and those things, but kind of that's where he was moving. Nina Infinity, right? Just another YouTuber in that spectrum was on Bunnies in the chat, was on a show with Dick Masterson, and I believe it was Ricada's Stream, actually.
Correct.
And Nina Infinity and Dick and Eric, and Nick began talking about Eric July's comic book, Isom. Dick has a co-host on his show who's named Vito Gesualdi. Now, Vito is a contentious figure on the internet because if you go on Twitter and you search his name, you're going to find a bunch of people calling him pedo and all these various things. I do not think that is the case. I've listened to the guy for a little while now, and I think he says stupid shit on Twitter and definitely gets himself in more trouble than it's worth. But I also think a lot of it is exactly that. It's Twitter. And I don't think people, especially on the internet, know how to separate those two things, which is sort of a problem. Eric July is also retarded and doesn't know if he eats breakfast. Magoo, always great in the chat. But no, so Vito had a sort of beef with Eric in the past because Eric had called him out, and Vito had attempted to copyright strike a geek nerdrotic live stream at one point because they were having Alex Jones on. He later apologized for that publicly and said he was wrong to do it, and which doesn't take away from what he did, but it is what it is. This is at this point, I think, a year and a half old drama. But leading into this, Vito has been on his show with Dick, sort of trashing Eric for a while. And Eric was actually defending, or rather, Dick was actually defending Eric July for the most part, and was sort of just saying, nah, you're just jealous, it is what it is. But then when he went on this Ricada stream, and Nina Infinity and him got sort of bickering back and forth, the idea of him reading the book and reviewing the book was broached. And I believe it was actually broached by Nina Infinity. So really, she should take all the blame for this. But I digress. I think Dick read the book literally the next day or the day after that. It was pretty quick. And he wrote notes, some basic notes. And then he put those notes out as a review of Isom. And it was not favorable. It definitely trashed the book. What I found funny about it at the time was I had not read the book yet. But I have a sort of past with comic books. I was a fan of comic books growing up because my mom was a fan of comic books, and so I sort of inherited her comic collection. So I had a lot of like Teen Titans and old Justice League and Avengers stuff and the Fantastic Four and stuff like this, sort of the early 70s to late 70s stuff, which is some of the better comics and certainly some of the better artwork. And so I was used to reading comic books, so I do like them. So I have read the first book at this point, and it is very bad. I don't want to give the impression that I am not biased, sort of going in this on the quality of the book. I did read it. I did read a PDF copy of it, but it was not good. So. But this is what Dick said. He put out a review, said it wasn't good. This spiraled into Eric and him having some back and forth on Twitter. Eric July making a video, sort of monetizing the haters, as he calls it, which is a great idea, by the way. I definitely side with him on that whole thing he does. I think that's great. And that's what's funny about this whole thing is like Eric's content I still enjoy. I think he's fine content creator. I just think he needs to stop with this shit because it kind of is stupid. But what ends up going on is other trolls in the what I will call Dick sphere start popping up. One of them being Riley. And Riley starts poking fun at Eric July. He makes a Twitter account and he calls it Clipaverse. And the whole running gag is that he's going to shave Eric July's arm hair. And this goes as far as I believe he hacked into somebody hacked into Eric July's like warehouse webcam at one point, which was fucking wild. And got like a photo of him standing there like a wife beater at a side profile that was really bad, and like it wasn't great. Some of that stuff I definitely look at as funny, but it's also not good stuff. So Riley is also connected to the Dick Show, so there was that, and it was just sort of like it started the whole drama thing up a little bit more volatile, which I think is bound to happen on the internet these days. But this spun into Eric July's either management or Eric July's himself or whoever is managing the legal side of his show to copyright strike on Twitter a number of different accounts. So this was like 6 or 7 accounts, but there was really primarily 2 that I think everybody cared about. That was Riley, and that was Mint Salad. Mint Salad's an OnlyFans creator who does content with Riley of all people. So these were 2 people who were connected to each other. Both of them had posted either clips of the comic book or clips of the Clipiverse sort of parody logos and such. So their Twitter accounts got removed. And when that happened, it sort of changed the way everything was playing out online, because now everybody started shitting on people from a little more visceral angle, because there was the whole removal thing, and that's sort of like a cardinal rule on the internet. And so Riley sort of took up that challenge to troll back and ended up going to Eric July's warehouse, in which he taped money with super chats written on them to his window while the warehouse was closed. So then after that went on, then the most recent thing was that it came out that somebody had sent an email to this thing called the Isom Ministries, which is this whole religious ministry group that prints, basically, they're a publishing group, really, that makes books and pamphlets and things for churches to hand out to patrons. And they make a lot of stuff that I think is geared towards younger people. So that seems to be certainly a major side of their stuff. They received an email from who I view as being a complete troll, reaching out to them, basically trying to entice them to engaging the Isom comic book in some sort of legal action. Now, as funny as, or as sideways as that may sound, that worked, it appears. Or at least more than one person reached out, and we don't know the full context yet. But they did originally make a fuss on Twitter and sort of put out that they were angry about this, or let on that they were not happy about this. Eric July and them entered some sort of negotiation. Eric July missed the deadline to respond to that negotiation, and then the Isom Ministries announced their lawsuit and have moved forward. Now, this is a pretty simple lawsuit, actually, from what I saw. I looked at what I could find, obviously, because that's always a challenge. But from what I understand, they hold a number of copyrights on the name and the asset Isom, including the publishing rights to materials. So this could be books, this could be comic books, this could be magazines, this could be anything with that name. From my understanding is the way that I've read all the legal side of it. And so when I saw the lawsuit broached, Eric July puts out this video saying that Dick Masterson and Vito were behind this, saying that he had evidence of this, that he was going to prove it. As soon as I saw that, I sort of was very hesitant to buy things at that point, as far as the way this narrative was going, because I knew that that Dick or Vito, I knew they didn't send that email. And anybody who read that email knows that they didn't send that email. Just from my perspective. And so when I saw him saying,
there was a tweet though, I think of Vito and I think he's just not smart. So, but made it sound like us had sent it,
yes.
But I think it was referring to, a fan. But you're right. Go
ahead. Yeah, and I think they even responded to that when I think it was Ripaverse Goalposts or one of the Twitter accounts had sort of broached that to Vito on Twitter, and so he did cover that on their show briefly, where he said no, I'm referring to the fans. I think it's possible Riley may have sent that email, or somebody in Riley's group may have sent that email, but I don't think so, because I think Riley would immediately fess up to it. And there's a number of reasons why he would. The whole argument that was put forward by Eric July was that it was tortious interference.
Right.
And I don't think anybody ever bothered to Google it. Because from my understanding, after a couple, just 15, 20 minutes of reading, I was like, well, this doesn't seem like tortious interference, because, you'd have to have, there's a bunch of other, pre-knowledge and things that go into it that wasn't being weighed in. And this is something I think Ricada mentioned on his stream, was he's like, that's just stupid. It's like the same people saying that the pinning the dollar bills to the window was akin to breaking and entering, and that he could be shot. And I'm like, well, no, that's not really how it works. So do you think that a church who pins a flyer to somebody's door, you can just plug them? I don't. Dick didn't Dick admit to reaching out to the religious Isom group? I could have sworn Dick did on Nick's show. So he said that he's talked to them after the fact and stuff like that. I've heard him talk about that. I also know he reached out, and this is what I think you're probably referencing, is he did reach out to the charity.
Yeah.
And that's something that we're going to get into for sure, because I think that's one of the more contentious issues legally, actually, where there's more of an argument to be made on either side. With the copyright stuff, from a legal perspective, and I'm not a lawyer, and you are, but you're not in copyright, but I thought maybe you'd have a better perspective on this. I don't see how this isn't copyright infringement. Or trademark infringement. If you have this Isom property on paper that holds these rights to publishing, and then somebody comes along and publishes a book, I mean, isn't that the whole legal process is supposed to happen? Is you have to.
Well, it doesn't mean that you can't publish a book, but it's about the trademark itself. So you'd have to. Now look, Eric has put out a few videos. The first video he did, I didn't know much about this. I saw his video. I then watched Dick's show. I had seen Dick only one other time when he had Top Lobster on. I thought he fumbled that interview so horrendously that I immediately
he did, but that's kind of Dick's style. I love that.
I'm just saying, he did not help Top Lobster out, and he didn't realize who the funny man was. So that's fine. I immediately just had a bad taste. Put that aside. Okay. Then Eric comes out with some videos. Eric is ANCAP. Okay. So he should not be believing in copyright, trademark, but he lives in the real world. However, going out doing the DMCA stuff, the digital media, whatever, copyright infringement stuff on YouTube was just bullshit. And you're going to get
it's hypocritical in my book.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got those things. Now, look, we know this is why you do this. Not every trademark is upheld. So, if you're, as an example, and it depends on the use, the specific use, how wide it is. You think someone's going to go in and try to do Nike, even if it's like a Nike comic book? No, it's too widespread. Okay, so there's breakdowns. You have to do what's called the Lanham Act, which is part of the 1946 trademark stuff. I don't practice this stuff, but I know enough about it. But I have a feeling as well that Eric is getting attorneys that don't necessarily practice this stuff either. Okay.
So this is a point that was brought up by Ricada multiple times, and he's been sort of pleading with Eric publicly to look at who he's hiring. And I have a feeling he knows behind closed doors who he's already hired. And, to be honest with you, I'm going to make an assumption here because I don't know and nobody knows. But I'm going to assume Eric probably is using what Rekieta suggested in his stream, was that he's using basically the same attorneys that he used to do his moving into his warehouse and doing all these other things within realty and stuff. And if that's the case, you do not have a specialized lawyer for what you're getting your business involved in, which is, that to me is like number one mistake.
Well, I will say this though about the trademark stuff. I don't know that Eric has done anything necessarily put a foot wrong on that side. His understanding of property law, as far as like or criminal stuff that he was talking about, the guy coming on his property, because when he went on Rekieta's. By the way, let me just say it real quick. He goes on Rekieta's show because Rekieta's talking about this stuff, and Eric's like, "Hey, bring me on." So he brings him on, and I happen to watch this. And
I was watching that live.
So. Okay, good. Yeah. So I watched the whole thing. And by the way, what that interview was, I sit down, I have a client come in and they want to hire me. These are the kind of ways I ask questions because I don't want to be put in a situation. You're going to tell me everything so that I don't go in there and I'm being, so I don't know what the situation is. And I can't tell you how many people come into my office and they're like, oh, this is the way it is. And all this shit went bad because of whatever. And I'm like, fine, let me read the pleadings. I read everything. And I'm like, okay, you're not understanding what's going on, or you're just wanting to, you're kind of hiding behind the reality and you don't really want to know the truth. Yeah. So that's the way that interview was. And then Eric goes and trashes Rekieta afterwards saying he practiced law. And I'm like, dude, you would get mangled on a deposition if this is your attitude. And you're going in there and he's asking you simple questions. I didn't think it was outlandish at all. Even if Rekieta doesn't practice law now, he has practiced before. Nothing was out of the norm. I thought it was really disingenuous by Eric at that point. And for me, that was disappointing.
Yeah, it was that stream was the two big, I think, points that angered me was the reaction after the fact, or irritated me really. Was the reaction after the fact, the shitting on Rekieta, the not practicing the quotes thing, and what was funny about that was, I'm like, okay, the argument can be made he doesn't practice. I get that he's not like doing legal stuff anymore, fine, but the reality of that is this is still somebody who got a degree in some form of legal framework and has some knowledge that the normal layman you pull off the street is just not going to have. Like,
then you
still should be
him.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's just sort of amusing to me, the reaction after the fact, because it just doesn't fit.
Right.
And then, obviously, I think the big point that Dick's sort of circle attached to on the first thing that happened in that stream that I think people glommed onto clip-wise, and I put the clip out, so I know, was a clip of him talking about how the book cost a certain amount. They had this charity amount, and that's sort of where the charity stuff gets involved. So what I think we'll do here is I'll briefly cover the way that I see the charity stuff, and then you can do the same, and we'll sort of get into that. Okay. So, Eric sold a book for $17 as a part of his campaign, with the idea being if somebody purchased that book, it would be going to this charity, which was run by this, I think, vet who, like a veteran who does this like thing where he gives out comic books to like kids and vets and things like that. Fine. Interesting idea. Eric July, from what I understand, at least what Eric and people alleged on Twitter, doing sort of, math and sort of adding things up, was that this didn't really make sense, right? Because if I say, here's $17 for your product and $17, or this product's going to charity, I think most people would assume that you're giving sort of the monetary value, right? So I think that was the assumption. But then that sort of shifted and changed. And on the Rekieta stream, Rekieta really was reluctant to ask these questions because I don't think he wanted Eric to respond in a way that would get him in trouble legally. But I think Eric, in a way, sort of did, because he said the thing you can't really say, which is that the book was only $14. It was only this amount, or basically he changed the math statistics on what this book costs versus what he was advertising that it cost. And that is a rough thing to do when you're talking about charity from my perspective, with legality wise. So I don't know the law side of that at all. I'm not good on that stuff because I just don't have any familiarity with charity things. But maybe you can shed some more light on that.
Well, what it sounds like to me, and when Vito came on a few nights later, and they talked about it, Andy, is that he's basically saying 17. Look, if we did one book, it's basically $17 the cost to do this. So you sign up on the website and you're going to do it. Whatever, and it's $17 goes towards one of these books. However, if you get a bunch of books, now it's like, $14 or $13. So the average came out to like 13. And so they're like, whoa, that isn't that. And I think what Nick was trying to say there was like, one, shut up, because it should just be the same amount for every book. Because otherwise now you're saying it's more, you're not just. So you take all these orders as an example, right? If you had to go each one and you go like, okay, one book, okay, Mr. Whatever in the warehouse, run out to the place and get one book, and he puts it on the thing and then mails it out. That might be, $17 worth of whatever you say. But if you're not, and you're like waiting for all the orders to come in, and then you do a bunch of orders at a time, that one guy goes out there and gets a pallet, well, now it's $13. So there's problems with that. And I think that could be an issue. I think, Eric didn't mean it to be, but he's like, look, the more you get, the less it is, and it's a discount. And so that seemed to be problematic and by the way, Dick and these guys, they're trying to cause problems. I get it. But Eric is also, there's the problem with it, which is like, I get it. You're the face of this, but you're also this online media person, and you're out there saying all this stuff, but you're not really a CEO, and you want to be. So why don't you pick one? Okay. This business might be the best thing for you. Then you need to sit down, and this needs to be your life, so that everything is going through it is done correctly, and the business is all run correctly, and you understand the charity side of it, so that you're not putting out bullshit claims, or that you think are fine, but they may come back to haunt you, that you did some sort of nefarious stuff. You didn't mean to, but it could be a problem with some of this. And I think that's part of the problem with the charity.
Yeah, I think, on the note of Dick and Vito, it's like, here's the thing. I think Dick specifically, removing Vito from the equation, because I think Vito did have a bit of jealousy, obviously, about the fact this guy made a bunch of money on comic books, and he was on the opposite side politically, and there's all that stuff. Okay. But with Dick specifically, Dick was... he literally said on his show, like, I hope he makes money. I hope he raises a bunch more money than you. Like, he was antagonizing, basically, Eric to do good. Where that shifted was when he realized that the product was bad. And I think Eric has a problem where he wanted to build a parallel economy. I mean, that's where his book idea sort of leads. Is like, I want to build a separate economy to compete with Marvel and DC and all these people, which I actually think is fine. I think it's 100% doable over time. But I think you're 100% right. The way to do that and insulate yourself from these kind of problems is to pick somebody to run your business while you are being the creative side of it and being the sort of media face of it with your channel that's successful and things like that. But
perhaps he's doing that. I just don't see that that's the case.
That's not what's going on. It just does not appear to be the case. It appears to be, I mean, there are people behind closed doors who are obviously running some of the accounts and stuff, but for the most part, he's in this. And that's not a good idea. Like, just from, by the way, I'm saying this from an internet perspective. It's not a good idea to do that from an internet perspective. It's a whole other thing legally, because now you have all your statements out there. You've made yourself a public figure in all these positions and stuff. And it's like, it's just not, it's not a smart way to have gone about it. And I think that, by the way, Dick and Vito, as bad as they might be as far as the antagonizing and trolling and doing that kind of thing, somebody would have done this eventually. Like, somebody else would have come along and done this to him, and it would have been when this is more developed. could theoretically have happened within a pretty big window as far as the copyright trademark stuff goes. So I think people also miss that as like, this is something that's just how the internet and being on in this business sort of works. This is going to happen, and you need to be able to handle it and react to it. One of the things that happened today, which we can briefly touch on, which I know everybody's sort of now having their armchair lawyer takes online about. So it appears that Riley went to the Isom grave and has taken a photo next to it and left a bunny and a turtle doll at the gravesite of Eric July's great-grandfather.
I saw that.
This is funny.
So maybe back up to Eric's last video. Okay, so last video, and I'll let you say it, but he basically explained where the name came from, and I think he's trying to set himself up on the trademark
legal side.
Yeah. And then it also badmouthed the what is it? International Ministry of I don't know, something. I had it up here.
Christian Ministry.
There it is. The International School of Ministry. Also kind of bashed them for being Christian and filing a lawsuit.
Christian Ministry.
Yeah, it's just stupid. So anyway, why don't you explain the name?
Oh, so yeah. Basically, he had never publicly stated where Isom came from.
It's such a stupid name, by the way.
Name. And it is a dumb name. Like, it just is. It's bad. It doesn't roll off the tongue. It has a bunch of grammatical errors. It's also 4 letters. There's a whole bunch of things that go into that from a writing perspective. But
he made a bunch of money. I appreciate that.
Yeah, he made a bunch of money. That's great. But yes. That wasn't Riley. So Jay Forte is right. I know it's not Riley. Riley said he was on his way there. So I don't know who took the photo, but somebody posted this photo on Twitter. You're right, though. I was confused. But basically, it says in this video that the name comes from his great-grandfather or great-great-grandfather, some old relative of his, right? So Dick Masterson on his live stream, who did like this 4-hour stream on Rumble reacting to all this stuff that had happened, somebody in the chat finds the Find a Grave website posting for this gravesite, which has the graveyard listed and all that. So somebody today dispatched to there and left a bunny and a mutant ninja turtle to represent Dick and Vito on the gravesite. Now, Eric July has seen this. He has reacted to this. And then I have seen a bunch of people in the Twitter thread saying how it's illegal to visit somebody's gravesite that's not related to you. And I was like, well, that's not really true, because like Find a Grave is a website for a reason, and there's like a bunch of people who literally make a tourism bit out of it. Like I don't think those people are committing felonies by going and visiting graveyards. So I don't really get how that works legally, but seemed kind of retarded from the online reaction to it. Listen, I think showing up to warehouses and going to people's grave sites and all these things is dumb on the internet. But it's the internet. This is going to happen. People are going to do this shit. It is kind of what it is. I don't support it, but it's also when it happens, I'm going to laugh at it. Like, that's the truth.
Right. And then like Eric, look, like I said, I was defending Eric, and I still think he has a good chance in a lawsuit, actually. So, but with that in mind, he says when, I don't know, the guy's name was Riley, showed up at the factory or at his warehouse, we can shoot him on site type of thing. And I'm like, no, this isn't as Ricada got to it. It was an open parking lot. You came through there. You don't get to just shoot someone. There's a thing called curtilage, which is the area around surrounding your buildings. But that is different in what we're talking about here. So you don't get to include that as part of like he's trespassing when it's an open area. Same with the internet legal people here, the going to visit a gravesite. Really? Okay. Maybe a restraining order for showing up and harassing you. Okay, maybe you could do that.
Well, so you don't get to just shoot him. There was a police report made. He called the cops, Eric did in regards to him visiting
Eric
the
said they
warehouse.
called the cops, but then when he got pushed on a little bit more, I don't think he actually was there, and I think they might have been called later on, not at the time of the incident.
Right. Yeah, I probably agree with that. That seems like what happened. It's amazing 90s kayfabe though. Yeah. So that's what I think Eric was not prepared for. Is the internet is sort of in its 90s kayfabe era again.
Wait. I'm going to push back here. So, first of all, he's making a comic book, okay? So, no offense to all the comic book people out there, but you're not going to you're getting a different crowd, and then you're getting a different crowd that hates comic books. This is everything you should expect going into this world. I'm just throwing it out. I'm going to get, a little edgy here too, but Eric should have realized what he was getting himself involved in when he started to do comic books as a grown man. And,
to be clear, when you make a video on your channel saying you have proof that these two individuals did something, i.e. Dick and Vito emailed this ministry and did this, you're kind of opening the floodgate of them to attack you. I mean, you've publicly basically said these people are trying to ruin your life, ruin your business. It's like, yeah, okay, well then now you've created the two worst trolls you can have. Like, I mean, he's done everything every lol cow we make fun of on the internet has done in the last month, and people seem to just forgive it. And I think Ricada obviously has said why people are forgetting it, which is the fact that Eric July basically has a list of people who he won't associate with, who can't be on streams with him, who he won't talk with. And when you do that kind of shit on the internet, that's gonna fucking run you into trouble eventually. Like, that's just not how the world functions. I'm cool with Dick. Vito is a bundle of sticks for sure. And I agree with that assessment, by the way. I've been trying to get Vito on this show for a while. The fucker keeps replying to my DMs and then ghosting me. But
so
eventually,
I get it. Yeah.
Eventually, I'll get him on my show. Dick has already agreed to come on episode 108 or 109, so we're going to have him on. But
why so far away? You should have had him on 69.
So it's sort of a running joke because his old co-host, who he also was involved in a massive lawsuit with, Maddox, their show ended on 108. I believe it was. No, it was actually 107 that they ended on. So we're going to do 107 or 108.
Let me see. I'm trying to figure. I'm like on 125. I'm going to give Andy about another 4 or 5, and then he's done. So.
Andy's great. Dick's morning radio laugh every 25 seconds of yelling a sack of shit. Yeah, so I agree with all these statements, but it doesn't really matter. Like, right. It didn't. None of that mattered to me. It didn't matter who Dick or Vito was. I was fans of Dick beforehand. I was a fan of Eric beforehand. But after seeing all the video reactions and seeing the Twitter takes and all this horseshit from Eric, I'm like, man, you've really dug yourself a nice little hole here. Now, from the legal angle, go ahead. From the legal angle, no, you now. Fuck off.
Okay. Okay. Well, and I'll let you ask the question, but all I was going to say was, Eric puts together this video, the first one, saying that there's a lawsuit out there. Now, what he didn't say, he said they hadn't been served, so it likely had been filed or at least been intimated that this was going to be. It was filed because I read it. And then he takes time to put this video together with all this evidence. And I wish he would throw things by his attorney first, because the attorney might go, hey, you don't actually have proof that these guys did it. You have proof that someone in this campsite said, and by the way, tortious interference, you don't have a contract with them. It's not the way it's going to be. They can say shit to people and reach out to them. That's perfectly fine. Anyway, so or his attorney said, yeah, tortious interference, not knowing that's not going to be the case.
Not how it works.
That's ridiculous. I could go to a place and trash him. Defamation, maybe, if it's not true.
Again, it legitimately took 15 minutes on Google for me to figure out. I was like, so why didn't an attorney do that?
All right, so I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so from a legal angle with the copyright stuff, from my perspective, and I want to get your kind of take on this, is it's actually pretty open and shut from my perspective. If they own the publishing rights for this name, for this existence, and they can paint in court that these things are related in some way. Now, that is the only thing that I think is actually shaky from a legal perspective, because they have to say, well, these things are related. They can't, like, if I create Isom music players, right, and release Isom music players, they can't say, well, you're in the religious field, so we're going to sue you for trademark infringement or copyright, right? It has to be sort of related in some way, and so because he has this Christian-themed character, as people are painting it online, people think he's going to lose the case. Now, I'll say, I think his legal argument from my perspective is that this isn't a Christian-themed comic book. Because although there might be some loose associations with Christianity, it's not really the major theme of the book. And having read the first book, I'd say he could win on that case.
There's a cross on his belt.
Right. So that's the argument being put on Twitter is there's a cross on his belt, and the character is Christian, by the way. I don't want to say that's not true, but the reality is a character merely being Christian and having a cross on his body when I mean, what do we want to say? 20% of the United States probably wear a cross. 10%, 5%. You know, a huge portion of the population wears this thing on their clothing. It's an average everyday thing that everybody has. So, and it's on people's walls and all around in the backgrounds of videos and movies and photos. So it has some sort of open connotation. So merely having a cross to me is not going to be enough to say, well, this is Christian affiliated, because the cross at this point is used in multiple faiths, right? The pagans use the cross, the Catholics, the Christians, there's sects of weird African religions.
Yeah, I do it just to keep away the vampires. So
exactly.
This kind of law, this is what a lot of law is like this, which is it's called elemental, which it doesn't mean like Sherlock Holmes. What it means is there's elements to it. There's like bullet points.
Fire, water, and air.
Right. There's bullet points, which is you have to have this, and then you have to have this, and they have that. This one has use, commerce, and confusion. Okay, that's kind of that we'll just really narrow down because I don't do, like I said, trademark law, but I'm not a dummy on this either. So is it being used? Is there a trademark being used? Is it already trademarked? Isom has it. The International whatever School of Ministry, yes, they have a trademark, and they're using it. Is Eric using it? Yeah, he's using Isom. He's selling something as Isom. Is it in commerce? Yes, he's using it in commerce, and they're using it in commerce. They're selling books, and he's selling books. Now, the big one here, and it's going to come down to this one because those two elements are found, which is confusion, likelihood of confusion. And there's case law, breaking all this kind of stuff down. His is video, and this other one's comic book. Well, these are both like books type of thing. And this is the real thing. Is there really, now they use the veto or the email from Riley as in their lawsuit as that was the confusion. Look, this person had confusion. Now, in Eric's defense, he's like, look, this is someone trying to fuck with us, and they're not confused at all. They were playing a joke. They were trolling the ministry school, and they sent him this email. It's obviously associated with Dick. They know we're doing comic books. There's no confusion here. So is there really a reality? And by the way, this is what's called, there's multiple standards. This is like your typical civil. It's like reasonable person standards. Would a reasonable person be confused by the International School of Ministry and Isom, the name? Now, Eric is trying to, I think, go around the route of like, look, this is after my family or whatever. His name was Isom. That's what his name was. Was it his official name? Was that an acronym? Was it? And so kind of like, you don't have to trademark this, but no, I mean, you have trademarks of names all the time. Dell, just one comes to mind. Anyway, you can trademark a name that is there. So that's not an issue. I think there's a chance that they allow both of these in, right? I mean, there's a chance of it. It's not such a shut-in case because these are two different things. Now, the Isom, I'm going to call one the Rippaverse and one Isom, okay? So Isom, the Christian people, they can, there's not a lot. I mean, they could do comic books as well, right? Maybe confuse you, but are they going to be black comics? I mean, these are Christians. Are they going to have black comics? I don't know. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. I'm going to get sued by Magoo. Yeah, you will.
We got to get you on the show, Magoo, soon. I need
Don't
you
do
back
it.
on here.
I
We'll
just
talk
saw
about
him
something
on.
stupid.
I just saw him on Justin's show. It was not good. No, I'm just kidding. I actually listened to it
Magoo
yesterday.
has legitimately one of the best podcasting setups I've ever fucking seen.
Right.
The dude is like a consummate professional.
He and I
Absolute degenerate, but consummate
we did
professional.
a late night drunk podcast with Justin and a few others. He was bad. He was hammered, but no, he's a good guy. He's good. So the point on this is there's they could come out and basically like, look, there's a likelihood that this is not going to be. So I think the other issue is now that they've reached out and they've tried to make this agreement with Eric, they're trying to have a licensing agreement. They're trying to have him pay to use Isom. And by the way, I'd just be like, fuck your no offense, fuck the family, pick a different name and just move on. Don't be paying.
Well,
people.
so it was pretty much made clear in Eric's video that was the case. So the ministry went in negotiations with him. They offered a deal where he would license the content, but probably would have some restrictions on the things that he could do in the books. That was my assumption. He obviously didn't like this. They gave him a deadline to respond by. He didn't respond. Then they initiated the suit. To me, that's as nice as you can get from a legal perspective. They didn't have to do that. Like, so they have to know.
I think it's a little bit different, but I think you're close, which is they filed the suit. They did not serve him. They probably gave him a notice.
They gave him a copy of it.
Right. Well, I mean, that would be service. If you probably have to personally serve them, but they're like, look, we're not initiating service. We can avoid all this thing, but we have to protect our mark. So protecting our mark, otherwise you're going to file a suit maybe against us. So we're in court. We have this. We can drop it. We're not going to serve you yet, but let's negotiate. And they wanted too much. They probably wanted, like I said, a licensing agreement where he pays them ongoing over the year. And then they said, fuck it, we're serving you.
This was another point made by one of the lawyers, I believe, or somebody on Recade's stream. They were talking about the fact that
not real lawyers.
The ministry.
Just kidding.
They put out a sort of response. The ministry did, Isom Ministries, saying basically, this is why we have to move forward with things, right? We've served him this thing. He can read it. He hasn't responded, right? And the response to that was Ripper versus fans absolutely decimating the Isom ministry in the Twitter responses. And then Eric posts this video, and Eric's video in that calls them Christian ministries. He sort of riles up the fans towards the end of the video. And the problem I see with that is now, and I think the point that was made by this other lawyer, was that this was a trap that the ministry was setting. Basically, by them doing this, now you have reference for this court trial or court case of hundreds of people basically denigrating Isom and talking about how they're fake Christians and talking about all this stuff. And I do think that's a good point. It's like when you sort of make these videos like Eric did, it puts yourself in a bad legal position in the future. And on top of it, what is the value gained of this last video he put out? What did you gain from that changing the narrative? It didn't change any of the narrative on the lawsuit. And I see Jay Forte, once again, Eric is self-defeating as himself. He is. He's sort of like, you're giving them your strategy beforehand. You're giving them their, right? This is sort of the argument Recaida had when everybody talks about his lawsuit and stuff. They go, well, why are you talking about it? You shouldn't talk about it. He says, listen, I understand the risks of that. But I don't think Eric did. I think he doesn't, I didn't think he understood it. Why do you think?
I just don't think that what he said had any bearing on the court case. So what about what he said confuses the situation? It's not going to. It's just shitty, which is, once again, he's an ANCAP. Then he has reasons to not. He's like, they have a personal belief that I shouldn't. Copyright is gay and fake. Then he goes and says, "Oh, they're Christians, and according to the Bible, they shouldn't be filing lawsuits." I'm like,
so wait, I want to jump in real quick.
Well, he's wrong, and that's
from my
stupid.
understanding, that was the reason that they framed it. The reasoning behind Isom the Ministry contacting Ripa and talking with Eric was originally because they made the argument that Christians are supposed to talk to other Christians before initiating lawsuits, and that, from some Christian point of view, I know is a thing because I've heard that before. Like there's supposed to be some sort of meeting and then you're supposed to sort of turn the other cheek, I think, at the end. But I don't think that's what they were doing. I think that was sort of their way of instigating this argument.
Look, I do that all the time. I always encourage people, nothing is better than instead of just filing a suit, you go and you talk to them, hey, bitch, turn over the kids. And then if not, I'm filing a motion. No, but I mean, you try to negotiate. It's what you're doing a lot of times when you're reaching out to them, and it doesn't matter. By the way, acts of negotiation are usually inadmissible. You can't, because the court wants you to negotiate and to come to conclusions. So they don't get to say, oh, you made this offer. Well, we're going to use that against you. But I always try to give people the chance to do the right thing in the first place. And if not, well, then, sometimes it depends on what the situation is. You can use it against them. This is not going to be helpful. Now, maybe it's part of like attorney's fees. Getting attorney's fees, I looked this up today for trademark stuff, is not necessarily easy. There's some tests to go at, but sometimes if you're doing things that are, if you're you're doing a video and you're sending your people out there, it may be malicious to the point where they're like, look, we're not only going to have you, we're going to uphold the trademark. We're also going to say you're going to pay attorney's fees because of your shitty way that you're going about this. But as far as the most part of the case goes and what he's saying, I don't think it has anything to do with, does this confuse it? Is this an issue of any, exactly. It doesn't do any of that else. Yeah. I have a belch thing on my soundboard, but I don't there we go.
I give out some good ones. That was a good one too.
By the way, I won a belching contest in high school. I had a sore throat, but
anyway. I did. This is an actual thing that so I used to do, because I was homeschooled, right? But there was this. You had to do these. No, back they had. You had to do like the SAT test, right? And even if you were home, now they don't really have these for kids. But at the end of every year, you had to do these things called MAP tests, and you had to do these things called SAT tests, or they were called something else, but they're basically the SAT. And so I would have to go take these tests, right? And it was fine, I was never a good test taker. It was always my issue with school in the first place, was that I was always better on my feet than I was when you put a piece of paper in front of me. Like math, like I'm an auditor. Like my job is literally mathematics. Like that's what I do for a living. That's how I make my earnings. But at the same time, I do all my math in my head. Like I don't do it on paper. And they always wanted you to show your work. That was the whole thing in school. Right. And I was like, that's fucking stupid. I don't need to. I can do it faster than you can. Like, you're a dumb high school teacher. Like,
But see, like me, I went to college for engineering, and showing your work is a big deal, because you need to.
Yeah, that's a necessity.
Yeah, I mean, hey, rocket just went off in the wrong spot. Let's go figure out why that was the case. Oh, that's why I also make my 7s with the line through it. But look, it's great for you. I'm glad you can do that. I don't know what that has to do with what we're talking about.
I'm sorry, it was a sidetrack thing.
No, it was great because I was trying to tie
with
it back
the SAT.
Too, and I don't remember
with the SAT test.
Okay.
When I would go to do those SAT tests. The contest that I won during that was milk chugging, because they had those cheap fucking free lunches that they would get in big boxes delivered to this fucking thing, right?
But it was like 2%.
Yeah, oh yeah. It would be boxes and boxes of those little containers, like the ones you would put the missing child posters on. Right. And we would sit around in a circle at the test tables and just put piles of them in the center of the table and time each other. And every kid did this. It was like the thing everybody would do while they waited for the test to start. I used to be the fucking champion at that shit.
Let me tell you. So I'm in college. A buddy of mine, he goes in there. He gets one of those things at the cafeteria for the milk. Those little, I don't know, 6-8 ounce, whatever they are.
Yeah, exactly.
Sits down. He has some cereal. He cracks it open and he starts to pull it in. And he just chugging it, and he stops and he sits down and he spits out and he goes like this, and it's just solid. It's rotten. He threw up. That was a horrible experience for him,
dude. It was like, dude, I think back being a kid when I would go to those tests, and like they would literally, like, we would get milk, cheese sticks, and crackers, and I'm like, this is just a fucking, like, you were just constantly being fed the worst things possible as far as food goes. Here's pure carbs and all, like, lactose. Just eat all the soy. Like,
yeah, crazy. So anyway, we got this lawsuit here, and
yeah.
For the most, so I honestly believe there's a chance he may, depending on what it is, he may get out of this thing, or as attorneys like to do, I always do a cost basis, like a cost analysis risk in scenario. What's likely going to come out in court? What's it going to cost you to go through that? And I know they're doing this. And, I think Ricada was breaking down with this company. It's mostly volunteers, but they bring in like 1.2 million or so for their books, where, Eric, a year where Eric is doing like 4 million, I think, for each cycle he's going through, he's been doing. So, he's got a little bit more than them, and they're not that big of a so they probably wanted
I want to push back. I'll push back on this, though. I've seen on Twitter people saying because they have less money and resources, they're going to lose because it's a money lawsuit. And I've said the problem with that,
it's a what?
From that perspective, well, people saying that basically because Eric has more money than their organization, that he's going to railroad them in court. He's going to be able to win somehow because of financial.
He's not doing so good so far.
And exactly. And the point that I'll make towards people is this. When you have a Christian ministry like these groups are, they might make that amount of money, but if you think for a second their legal team is not top fucking notch, because they're either going to have volunteer lawyers who are whatever the best they have in that pool, who are going to be pretty good. To give you an idea, the reason I know this is because I have some experience with nonprofits and religious groups around the state of Alaska. These guys hire, yeah, exactly. These guys hire the best fucking attorneys that exist in this state.
Yeah.
And if not, they're hiring the best attorneys that exist in Seattle or the next state over or the next state over and so on and so on. And so I think this is going to be the case here. They're going to have a decent legal team.
Yeah, they don't pay their look. I'm not even worried about that. They do a little crowdfunding. They'd get the money.
Right.
They are from Redlands, California. It's just east
of
the Empire, over by San Bernardino. Trust me.
This is something you know a little bit more about.
yeah. It's Southern California. There's plenty of patent and trademark attorneys down there that
I guarantee you there's Radners who live there with my same last name.
Right. So there's no shortage of finding a good trademark, and it's federal court. There's a few of them that'll do it. I mean, it's not an issue. I don't think they're going
to be honest with you, I always forget that you're in California constantly.
I try.
How far away are you? I'm just curious. How far away are you from like Montebello?
Let me just put my address in here. I'm in Sacramento. Montebello, I don't know where that's at.
Okay, I've been over to Sacramento a bunch.
Yeah.
Okay, my grandfather lives in Montebello, so I've been over there a bunch. But my cousins and my adopted aunts live in where you're at, Sacramento. They have a house there.
Yeah, so I'm actually east of Sacramento, just up on the foothills. But yeah, that's where I'm at.
That's a pretty area. It's beautiful. It does look good.
Yeah. So
I remember when I went through Sacramento, I was like, everybody sort of told me like, oh, that's where like a lot of the the comment I got from my grandfather was a lot of retirees and ex-military people will go over there and stuff like that. And when I went up there, it was like my impression was it was just a better version of California.
Well, yeah,
slightly, not.
With I'm in Sacramento County still, but I'm literally 3 miles from the next county, which is El Dorado. And then
That's the way to do it.
Another county that's Placer, and those are both, really Republican slash, so they were wide open in COVID. I mean, it wasn't, but yeah, you just immediately go into Sacramento and it changes a little bit, and you go further into San Jose, and it's just disgusting.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Oh, the worst was I always tell people this, but I went on vacation to what's that area in California that's sort of known for the debauchery now? Fuck me. San Francisco.
Oh, I was like, how can you narrow it down? Yeah, San Francisco.
So I went to San Francisco fairly like 2014, 15 with my family. We were on a trip there. We went to Disney World, and then we went to Disneyland and like Universal stuff, visited my grandfather in Montebello. I slept on the beach in Venice Beach for a while, like went homeless kind of for a bit, and then slept in vans and had my leg infected. It was a whole experience.
Nice.
But I ended up back in San Francisco because that's where we flew out of, and we got to kind of look at that area, and it was beautiful. There's these brick homes and exposed brick everywhere, and like it was nice. I like architecture. That's my thing. When I'm on vacation, I go to historical architecture spots. When I was in Florida this last trip, I went to homes in Pensacola that were built in the mid 1800s and Spanish architecture, and that's what I'm actually into. Like as a personal thing, I spend a lot of money to go see very extravagant buildings. That's my hobby, as it would be. The next adventure I'm going on is to Florida. I'm going to make it a filming adventure. I'm going to go look at the Getz Mansion, which is the Neff House, which if you look up is a really cool looking house that eventually one day I'd like to own. There is no place in the United States more than that house I would love to restore and put back to what it looked like in the past. But when I went over to San Francisco, it was so beautiful. And then I went back there just 2021. I flew into the airport. I left for 2 hours because I had a delay on my flight and a layover. I was on the way to an convention for the Libertarian Party, in fact. And I walked around the city, and it was just the same buildings I had looked at in 2014, 2015, but they looked like they had gone through the 5th season of The Walking fucking Dead.
Yeah.
There were people on the streets in just heroin dazes. And I'm from Alaska, so I know what that looks like. Like, I've lived in the city here. I've dealt with homelessness. I've dealt with all those people. It was sad. Like, seeing the reality of, like, this snapshot in history of just 5-6 years and how much just destruction had been levied. Like, I searched and searched for photos on my phone so I could get like a clear comparison, but it was just insane seeing it in person. And so like that can happen like that, man, because that was like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, I don't work. I used to work downtown Sacramento, and I haven't worked down there for 10 years or so, but I still had to go down there every once in a while. And I went down there a few months ago. Actually, it was as an LP thing, California. And I drove by the mayor's office, and there's like one of the main courthouses down there, and there's just homeless lined up down on his sidewalk, and this dumbass is like just okay with this. It's unbelievable. Luckily, like I said, my direction is not so bad.
I'll ask people too. I mean, like here in Alaska, we have homeless encampments. So they like section off a park or something, and that's where everybody goes. In Alaska, like it's rough being homeless. Like it gets fucking cold, so you have to be able to. I mean, you're bushwhacking basically if you're homeless. Like that's the reality. And yeah, these people have addiction problems and mental health problems and stuff, but really they're surviving. And Alaska's huge. So the homelessness issue to me is really a problem here in Alaska of government involvement. Like,
Oh,
if
yeah.
these people were just allowed to go out and camp and do their thing in the larger wilderness here in the state, this wouldn't be an issue. And you could build them areas to do that for next to nothing. But in other states, when you go to places like California, New York, these places, I'm going to take a trip to New York relatively soon because I want to go see some stand up. Like, I know that's one of the things I'm going to do. Now, I'm sort of notorious for having no problem to walking headfirst into debauchery. I am somebody who will go on trips, and I'm in architecture, and this is a sad truth of the United States. You realize when you're in architecture is most of the places that somebody like myself would be interested in seeing that have some sort of historical implications to them in the way they were built or the style that they were built are in the poorest areas, are in the areas where these buildings have been completely left to dissolve, basically. And so I feel like a lot of times when I'm visiting these places, I'm sort of a historian of the decline of these historical sites. I mean, some of the buildings I've gone to are, buildings that were built in the mid 1800s that had hundreds of historical acts done in them that are just being left to rot, basically.
Oh, they're still having some historical acts in them, let me tell you.
Yes. But it's definitely depressing when you see this stuff traveling around. Like, even in Florida, to give you an idea of some of the stuff, you'll recognize this because you're a lawyer. You have a right to an attorney. If you cannot afford one will be provided for you. Where does that come from?
I don't know. Is that your Miranda rights?
Right. So the Miranda rights, right? We call that, right? But there was a Supreme Court case, right? This went on in, I believe, the 1920s, 1930s was when it actually happened. I'm historical revisionist here because I'm thinking on the top of my head. But basically, the story goes, in Florida, right in Panama City, where I just was, this guy goes into this supermarket trade-like area, trading post, basically. And he was a random homeless guy, like a drifter, basically. He goes into the place, he leaves. It's a pool hall. That's what it was. It was a pool hall general store, right? So they accused him of stealing stuff. And the state of Florida pressed charges against him. He was arrested, and he went to court. And in the state of Florida at that point, if you didn't have a lawyer, they wouldn't give you one. You were forced to represent yourself. So he represented himself, and he lost in court. And he was convicted. When he went to jail, he petitioned the Supreme Court and higher courts. He says, listen, I didn't defend myself properly, but I'm innocent. The Supreme Court heard his case, and they ruled that you have to have some sort of representation, because if the state has a lawyer there who's arguing against you, you need to have equal representation. That was the argument. Regardless of whether libertarians agree with it, I agree with this decision, period. That decision is monumental in the context of history of law. Like, it just is. That building was torn down and destroyed by the help of the state of Florida. They ruled that that building wasn't historical. It didn't need to be saved. Now, keep in mind, sitting next to the parking lot for a chemical manufacturing building, which is now sitting where that building is an identical early 1900s concrete building that is identical to the one that the pool hall was. But they tore this down to build a fucking parking space for some fucking asshole who works at a fucking chemical company. And it doesn't have a ton of architectural, historical, context. But this is a building that was like definitely involved in the history of the United States. It was a major Supreme Court decision. This is a historical building that should have been kept, but instead it gets torn down and sold to a fucking corporation who basically just got it because they wanted it. Like, it's just in the general vicinity of their building.
So I don't know if the case you're talking about was a state case or federal case, because You don't want to get me going on the 14th Amendment and incorporation. So the 6th Amendment was typically in the Bill of Rights a right to counsel that was only applicable. It wasn't applicable to the states until they started doing all this incorporation bullshit. So I don't know. Maybe I wanted that building burned down. That's what I'm saying. But that's for a different day. We'll talk about that.
I'm Googling it now to see if I can get it. Okay. So charges with breaking and entering into a Panama City pool hall. Clarence Earl Gideon was denied his request that an attorney be appointed to represent him. The Supreme Court reversed his conviction, holding that defense counsel is fundamental and essential to a fair trial.
What year was that?
So that was. It is in Gideon v. Wainwright, 1963.
Okay, because the Sixth Amendment was incorporated, I think, 1932 through an Alabama
Okay, so that
case.
makes sense.
Yeah, so they were already
that does make
incorporated,
sense.
and they're like, hey, like you got to have the right to counsel. So I get it.
But it's just one of those.
By the way, this is libertarians that I get in these arguments with Toad and stuff about incorporation, and I don't need to get into what it all means. But if you want a national divorce, you want like a soft national divorce, eliminate the 14th Amendment and everything goes back to the states, almost everything, and you will have an amazing amount of power in all your states, and it's almost like a divorce.
I not only agree with you, but I agree with you with the historical context that I was raised from a man named Joe Vogler, who I would argue I am probably currently the most knowledgeable about historically, but this was an argument he made. He was also a lawyer, and he made the exact argument that you are making right here. So it's something I can definitely get behind.
Good. Even though it's episode 69, we'll still let you get behind it.
Yeah, completely off topic, but the Vogler thing. I've never talked to you on a stream about this. Did you watch the documentary thing I did?
I gave you sent me some things and I gave you a little input and you did a good job with it. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I remember that. Okay, I'm sorry. But
fine.
Yeah. What do you think about that from a legal context, right? This is the case that was brought against Manfred West. Was ruled a no contest, right? Because he got reduced sentences. The evidence, everything that would have been presented in the case was basically sealed. You can't ever know what any of that stuff was. You only know basically I've done the digging, so you can go on Listia and Justia and all the legal document search sites and all that shit. All you'll find is basically the description of what the police believe was done. Basically the base stuff that was involved in Manfred West's case. Manfred West is up for parole very soon. He's still alive. Most people don't even know that, but he's still alive. He might be released. I've looked at the parole stuff a few times now, and because of how long it was ago that this murder happened, even if they think he legitimately did it, I think they might release him. Alaska doesn't hold murderers nearly as long as other states because most of the people don't reoffend here. It's sort of weird statistically. But, having watched that documentary, I come down on the argument of somebody like Jack Coghill. And I know in that documentary I don't give a good impression of who he really was. But Jack Coghill is a hero of the state of Alaska. He was the lieutenant governor of the state. This is a guy who gave basically his entire life to bettering the state to a large degree. He may have made mistakes along the way, but the fact is the guy was always trying to better this state and better the people who lived here. And he's somebody who publicly stated later in his life that it was the cleanest extraction of a person he has ever seen. He doesn't believe this could have been done by just him himself. Yeah, I have a clue as to why Alaska doesn't repeat offenders. It's pretty black and white. Mostly white. Dude, that joke hits close to home. It's very accurate. I suggest everybody open their Google browser and search the Alaskan Avenger ASAP.
Look, I don't know a lot about your the Vogel. I know I watched the thing and I don't remember like everything about it. But if this guy is getting let out, I mean, the only way that they would bring up more, is some sort of damning evidence to reopen the case or to have it, something that wasn't available at the time, like some sort of DNA analysis or something.
Bunnies in the chat.
Yeah.
That's a Dick Masterson reference. Every time you see the bunnies in the chat, that's why they're there. He's on the thumbnail.
I thought it was a Mia
By the way,
Khalifa thing. So
I spent legitimately an hour doing the thumbnail for this fucking show.
Today?
I want people to. Yeah, it was. Dude, so I've been trying to put more detail in the thumbnails. I basically treat every thumbnail now as like a meme. It started with the Adam Nutter got the first one. I did like the alien with him on the screen eating a sandwich and stuff. I'm trying to make them more fun. Because if you look past on the past episodes of the show where we were focusing on more of strictly libertarianism,
right,
my stuff was very uniform looking. Now I'm doing the opposite. Every thumbnail is going to be different. It's going to look a little bit different. I did steal this nice little graphic you see down in the corner. I found out last episode, I believe it's a character from Overwatch. It has been turned into a Pepe. But what I Googled to find that was Pepe with a cowboy hat. And that is what came up. So that is my new logo. And I've now got my ad at the bottom. So that's my Twitter ad if people want to follow me. Go follow Tyler.
Yes.
At Tyler Janke. Because that's, I think that's your, is that your at now?
Yeah, that's been my, I've been on their Twitter for years. I think, let me see, 2012 maybe, when it opened up. I opened two
your account's got some age to it.
Right. I didn't try this account until just like a year and a half ago. I started doing anything with it, but yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, I think my account's fairly new in context of things, but I'm amazed. Like,
so
for instance, like today.
Sorry.
Oh Jesus, you got an early account.
I do.
Have you ever been suspended?
No.
Yeah, that's why. So this is the thing, right? I try to tell people this. People don't understand the Twitter algorithm. If your account's older and you went through 5 years or more without any kind of Twitter algorithmic response, you are way less likely to get a response in the future. So if your account was clean for 5 years, you're way less likely to get flagged in the future via report button, like, when people report your tweets.
Yeah.
Because they view your account at a higher preference in their algorithm because of its age and the time it went without a violation.
Right.
So it's sort of weird. If you have an older account, you can actually benefit from it in a weird way, which a lot of people don't get.
Well, that's me. I'm an older account in general, and my Twitter. I have another one that was, let me see, when was this opened? 2007. So I have a 2007 and a 2009.
I went looking for a new photo of you to use for this thumbnail, which I ended up not doing because you didn't send me one, goddammit. Here's the problem. Yes, I asked you to, but it's fine. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Here's the issue. I hate using the same photo. I hate using the same photo over and over again for thumbnails. And whenever I ask somebody to send me a photo of themselves for a thumbnail, they send you a photo. I'm going to do it with my camera right now. Like, pretend I don't have the hat on, right? They'll send me a photo with the top of their head missing. Like, the very top of their head out of the frame. The problem with that for a thumbnail is I've got to make it look good. Right. And, like, I can't recreate the top of somebody's fucking head. So I'm constantly having to re-DM people being like, hey, can I get a photo with your whole face?
I just looked in here and I see you wrote that. And I apologize. It's been, my daughter flew home this weekend and it's, do I have excuses? I don't know.
Your daughter, that's I think you've talked about her before.
One's in. So I have 4 kids. One's in college in Washington. One's in San Diego, and the San Diego one flew home. So
All older now?
yeah, and then one in college here in town, and then
Oh,
the last one's a senior in high school. So 3 in college, 1 in high school. Crazy.
that's a good position to be in as a father, though, because you know you're like almost finished.
Right. Like my wife took my daughter. They went to I don't know Napa or somewhere this weekend. I should know. So I'm home
That's a
with the other
beautiful area.
with the other 2, and I'm like, okay, just figure it out. They have jobs. They went to work. They come home. They make their own dinner. I'm doing a fucking podcast.
Fuck yeah, that's the way to do it. My dad is like getting to that point now. My dad just bought. I haven't talked about this sort of publicly, but my dad bought a coffee stand.
Oh, okay.
Called the Mud Hut. I can say this publicly. It's called the Mud Hut in Seward, Alaska. Go leave it a good review if you're on here. It's a great little place. The locals love it here. He bought it from a woman who owned it and before, and my brothers work there and stuff like that, so it works out really well. And it's interesting for him because he's looking at it sort of, it's like his retirement. He's worked his whole life, so like his thing is like, I'm just buying this business. I know it's profitable. I know it can make it. So this is sort of my retirement now. Like I'm done, whatever. But all his kids are like, he still has one kid who's like 15, 14. But they're all getting to the age now where he can kind of sort of be hands off and like start to take a step back, and focus on just one person, one kid, And he's a single dad, so that adds a whole nother fucking mess into the whole algorithm. People don't give that enough credit, but not having somebody to like watch children take care of kids when you're not there and stuff like that. Everybody assumes that that's a bad thing, but I'll be honest with you, as they get older, not having a second parent there, whenever somebody went away, you sort of are on your own. Like that sort of allowed me to do my own thing and sort of develop those like skills that I now use more often than not. So I'm sort of like, resentful and thankful at the same time. It's sort of weird.
I get it.
That combination.
My kids, we're kind of hands off. We have been a lot. So they, let them roam. They do, go out and do things. Like I was when I was a kid, and I just don't think a lot of parents do that anymore. We have friends that their kids are on lockdown, and it's just like,
that's rough.
Yeah, and they're not learning these skills. So when your kids go off and do their own thing, that you don't want their first time alone to be the first time that they're making big decisions in their lives. Give them those opportunities to be making bad decisions as they grow up, so that they know what the consequences are for not making the right decisions. And once they figure those things out and they've had a chance to kind of go through the bumper cars on those, they do a lot better. I mean, we just don't have problems because these kids are solid. So.
Agree. I think that's the way to do it. Well, I think we've had a decent show. We're at about an hour and a half, which is about where I typically end it.
Perfect.
I'm going to let Tyler plug here in a second, but for me, at the bottom of the screen, you're going to see @LibertyLayton. Go follow that Twitter account. Let me know what you think of the show. Leave a comment, all that jazz. Tell me what topic you want to see us cover next. I'll cover whatever. If it's something you want Tyler to cover, maybe leave me a DM or leave me a comment or something, and I'll beg him to come back on the show, and we'll cover that topic next.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure coming on here with you. So I'm Tyler Janke on Twitter. I have Libertary Podcast Review. Go find that. But recently, I've been doing a 3 series. Second one just came out with Pete Quinones. Talking about the ADL, the Leo Frank, the murder. We just went through section 2, and we're going to finish on with 3 coming up here next week. We're recording it. I think Pete really helped me walk through this better than just doing it myself, which was kind of my whole goal of starting it because he had already talked about it. I've gone so deep into this thing that please watch it. If you have questions or you think that there's mistakes made, definitely let me know, because I think I might be doing extra stuff when Pete and I are done, continuing that. So anyway, once again, Leighton, I always appreciate you having me on.
No, absolutely. You're one of my favorite guests to have on the show because it's always a good conversation. That's pretty.
Likewise.
Feel like we're used to each other at this point. That's always sort of a problem when you're podcasting, is finding people you can have a conversation with.
Yeah, exactly.
That's sort of the challenge, I think, when you're getting everything sort of started. I'm sort of trying recently. I'll try to get Top Lobster on here. I've been needing to get him on, and I think I'll probably try for that next time. Talk about some Nephilim shit or whatever. It'll be fun. But yeah, I think the Leo Frank thing. Do you know how many episodes or series, like, parts you guys are going to do, or have an idea of how many?
Yeah, so we've done 2. He just released the second one tonight, and then we're doing one more. He just wants to do 3. And so we've gone through the murder, we did the trial and all the appeals, and now we're going to talk about the governor's attempt to commute his sentence, the pardon board.
Okay, right.
The birth of the ADL from this, some of the KKK. I mean, I've just got so much in this head about it that I need to squeeze it out.
So let's plan on, after you're done with all the Pete episodes and stuff, we'll have you on this show. We'll do like a summary. Absolutely. Like an hour episode sort of discussing it. Because that case interests the shit out of me. And I've been watching some of the stuff with you and Pete. So
and it should be, because when you're done watching it with us, and you can go back and see the original source material yourself, you then can say, why is the ADL, why are they pushing to try to exonerate this guy? And I don't think there's a reason other than propaganda.
Yeah, so I'll watch all the Pete episodes you do with him, and then I'll be updated, and then when me and you do it, we can do more of a sort of general discussion about the case, so that'll work out good.
Sounds good.
I used to work at the pencil factory loft, where Leo's pencil factory used to be, and staff where weird shit would happen there all the time. Magoo, if you are willing, come on the episode with me and Tyler.
Yeah.
This is perfect. We're going to have a discussion about the Leo Frankton. We got a person in chat who's worked at the same fucking place. That'll be awesome. So I'm going to put that out there. Yes, exactly. It was definitely Magoo. It was Magoo with the candlestick in the pencil factory.
The NPC.
Absolutely. Yes, that would be a fucking awesome stream, I think. This has been great. Thank you guys for hanging out. This has been one of the more watched streams I've done recently, so if you want to subscribe to the channel, go ahead. Thank you. Honestly, I know some people will shit on me for this, but thank you for Vito Gesualdi for retweeting the fact that I am doing this stream. I know people will shit on this guy, but I've had conversations with Vito. I want to get him on the show. I've had conversations with Dick. I've also, by the way, seen Eric July live speak. I've paid money to go see this guy talk. So when people want to, there's Rip-A-Verse goalposts and all these other Twitter accounts out there who will shit on various people. I want to make this clear. I've literally been a supporter of Eric July for almost 5 years at this point. So for me to be saying the things that I'm saying and kind of coming out the way that I came out on Twitter and talked about this stuff, I think it does sort of give credence to kind of this horseshit drama that's happening.
Sure.
And why I think it's sort of sideways. But yeah, I think this was a fucking awesome show. And I will see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks.
I hope you guys enjoyed.